The next thing I want to talk about is a concept called batching. And many people will be familiar with the idea of batching tasks, but I think perhaps people don't use it as much as they possibly could to be as productive as they could in their working lives. So batching, in summary, if you don't know about it, is essentially to get all of the similar tasks and batch them into one period of time. So for example, if you have any sort of external contact tasks, email, social media, perhaps a LinkedIn situation where you have to respond to things on LinkedIn or post things on LinkedIn, any of these social tasks, you can batch them into one confined period throughout the day. And that might be 30 minutes to maybe an hour, depending on what kind of role you have, where you just focus on those particular types of tasks. And then you batch a next section, which has something, for example, maybe you are writing a report at the time. So you want to batch all of your report writing into this one section. And maybe you don't even need the internet for that particular task. Maybe it's just coming straight from your mind onto the page, so you can just work without the internet, without distraction on that task, and really get into that flow state as much as possible, because the distractions around you aren't causing that friction that's going to stop you from being able to get that work done that you want to get done. And then maybe after that, you have a third batch, which is something like, for example, in my case, it might be going back after I finish recording all this and editing all these videos. And then that's just going to take me a few hours or something, and I'll just batch that into one particular period where I just sit there and do only that and nothing else. And you might be thinking, yeah, that's something I could do, but what really is the benefit of this? And I think there's two benefits. The first is you stop yourself from running into friction, essentially. And when I say friction, I mean this in two ways. The first is the actual physical friction that it takes for you to get on your computer and change your task to something else. Or, for example, if you have to go to a different computer or you have to go to a different place, it stops that friction. It stops you from having to open up your email account and then close it and go back. That's physical friction. You might be thinking, that's probably not going to take that long. And yes, you're probably right, but that is some sort of time saver in the physical friction component. The next type of friction that I think is probably even more important that you will be saving if you use batching is psychological friction. And what I mean by this is when you want to complete a task, when you're working on a task, say you're writing a report, it's a task that you could really get into the mode with. You could really get into the zone and focus deeply on that task. If you're doing that, and then within 7 minutes or something of the task, you suddenly get an email and you quickly check it. And then even if you don't respond to it, you check it, and then your mind is suddenly taken up by that, or at least some extent of your working memory has been taken up by that particular email. But you say, it's fine, I'll remember to do that later. So you keep on working on your task. But then all of a sudden your phone rings and you get a message from your boss saying, hey, by the way, we have a meeting planned for this later this afternoon. Can you come? So you quickly respond, yes, of course I can come, and then back to the task you go. But now this is taking up a portion of your working memory as well as that. And what actually ends up happening in this situation is people end up trying to hold on to each little piece of information, even if they don't try to. It's just happening subconsciously, but people are holding this information, and they're preventing themselves from becoming truly immersed in one particular task at any given time. Aside from being unproductive, this also ends up making you feel a little bit less satisfied with your work, because you don't ever get into that zone where you're thinking to yourself, this is seamless, it's going really well, I'm being incredibly productive and I'm getting a lot done, and I feel good about my work. That's something you don't really get to if you're constantly swapping tasks throughout the day. So if you can find a way to batch your tasks in some sort of way that's going to reduce the amount of friction, both physical and psychological, I think it will help you quite a lot to increase your productivity. The final thing I'd like to discuss is just this idea of nudging. And I won't get too into nudging, because if you really want to get into nudging, which is basically using subtle changes in the environment to create a change in someone's behavior, including yourself, then I think we can talk about that in another video because it's a much bigger topic. And also the videos that I've been making with the company Neurified about consumer experience and user experience design and marketing and those sorts of things, and directly business facing psychological brain and behavior tools and tips and insights, then you can go to that video as well, and I'll leave a link to that one as well. But let's just touch on the idea of nudging for now, because I think it's worth mentioning in terms of personal productivity, because one of the things that you might not know is that your mind is constantly going through unconscious decision-making processes throughout the day. As you're going through your day, your brain is just constantly making decisions. It makes decisions about every single thing you do, about every time you want to look in a particular direction, every time you go for a walk down the street, where you're going to place your feet, every time you decide what you're going to do, whether you're going to make a coffee now, whether you're going to sit down and work on a task, whether you're going to do whatever. Every single moment here is a moment in which your brain is making a decision on your behalf. Most of the time, those decisions happen unconsciously. You don't sit there and think to yourself, okay, I'm going to change my behavior very slightly and deviate away from what the task I was doing at the time. But it happens anyway. Your brain is making these decisions for you. And this is where something called priming comes into play, because if you can change something about that environment, if you can create some sort of stimulus that's going to help to change the environment in which the person's making a decision, you can actually have quite a big impact on what decisions they're going to make. This is all sounding very conceptual, and we're talking about two different concepts here, but let's get really concrete. One of the things I like to use, because I might have a good day, I might work well, I might be very productive, get a lot done, but then my worry is sometimes will I be able to get as much done the next day? Will I wake up feeling motivated? Will I wake up feeling like ready to get into my day? And will I still remember the priorities that I set for myself the day before? Or, for instance, will I wake up and just decide, actually, today I'm going to take a chill day and just go to the beach or something? Like, how can I make sure that I stay in that focused and intentional mind space? And the way I like to do this is by every night before I wrap up for the evening, I make some subtle prompts in my environment that kind of prime me and nudge me toward making the decisions that I want to make the next day. So for example, I will clean up my desk and just leave my computer in the middle, and then perhaps if I'm working from a book, for example, I'm doing a research-oriented project, I might have a textbook that I'm using as a reference, and I'll put that to the side, and then I will just only put those things on the desk, and everything else that could possibly distract me, I put somewhere else. Or for example, if it's a filming day, like today, I will have the entire filming set up, all ready to go, and all set up before I even go to bed. And the reason for this is because when you wake up and you start going through your day, your brain is going to react to your environment in ways that you're not fully in control of. So for example, if you just walk into your office and there's a bunch of things from the day before sitting around, and there's just, it's got nothing, there's no clear direction for you to go, and there's no clear and obvious way of beginning your day, then you'll tend towards the path of least resistance. You'll go for the easiest thing you can possibly do. You might find yourself on social media or watching Netflix or who knows, whatever it is that captures your attention at the time. But if you can find a way, and for me, it's setting up my workspace in a very clear and very goal-oriented way the evening before, I think you'll find that you'll be able to get much more done much earlier in the day. So I hope you really enjoyed that course. It was just a short course, but I hope it contained some valuable insights with regard to productivity and especially the psychological and neuroscientific aspects of productivity. And I hope it's kind of helped you to change the way you think about productivity in hopefully quite a positive way. Just to recap a little bit, we started off by looking at this culture of hustle that we have as a society, where we place work on this pedestal and we assume that only by working hard and just really grinding it out will we be able to get the things we want to get done. And it also emphasizes this idea of not taking breaks, not valuing sleep, and just working hard and getting things done at any cost. And I kind of challenged this idea. I suggested that this way of thinking is actually not supported by the science, and in reality, a more effective way to be productive in the long term, and even in the short term really, but especially in the long term, the way to be productive is to not be afraid to take breaks, to make sure you're getting enough sleep, to make sure that you're prioritizing sleep, and to be sure to just cut yourself off and give some time to the other parts of your life and let yourself recover in a productive way, because overall this is going to make you a more effective person and a more productive person in the long term. Next, we talked a little bit about stress, and the reason we touched on stress is because we talked a bit about how stress can be good, but how it can also be quite bad, and why our society at large is pushing us toward being more stressed than is perhaps useful and can often lead to incredibly negative outcomes. But in particular, it can just derail us a bit and make us less productive than we'd want to be on an everyday basis. Then we went and looked at the environment that we want to be productive in and how we can kind of optimize our environments by separating our work and personal lives as much as possible and reducing distractions and being able to control our environment in such a way that makes sure that our brain doesn't get influenced by all the distracting influences around us, and that it instead stays on task and focuses and be as productive as possible. We talked about batching, which is a method for being able to successfully go through your day and be as productive as possible. And the way you're going to do this is by batching your tasks into different sections so that you don't have this task swapping friction on both a physical and a psychological level. And then finally, we talked a little bit about these ideas of nudging and about priming and how you can use this a little bit in your working environments, especially when it comes to setting up your work from the day before, and how you can use these unconscious subliminal tendencies of your brain to be as productive as you possibly can. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have anything that you found particularly interesting or that you would like to hear more about, just let me know in the comments. Let me know, send me a message, and because I would love to make another video on any topic that you guys are interested in.